I'm Leon Todd for G66. Welcome to another Tuesday Tone Tip. On today's video, I want to talk about the control switch MIDI function on your Axe FX3, FM9 and FM3 and how we can use it to control external MIDI capable pedals. Specifically the VP4. I want to explore a really cool setup using the VP4 in front of my Axe FX3 in conjunction with my FC12. Just take note that you can use this on an FM9 and FM3 with the onboard foot switches or with an FC6 as well. Let's dive into it. Before we do any programming, let's take a look at the preset that I'm using on the Axe FX3, along with the presets I'm going to be using on the VP4. I have a pair of these Brit 800 2203 high amps. I've just got this first one here with the input select to left and the balance all the way to the left. Similarly, on the second amp block, I've got the same settings, but the input select is on the right, balance is to the right. I have a stereo cab on here, so I'm going to be able to process incoming stereo signals. I then got some stereo pitch detune on here, a pair of multi-tap delays for a kind of Lukather style setup. One is set to the PCM circular, one is set to the PCM pan, and then a little bit of the studio reverb. Let's hear this on the neck pickup of my JTG. I've got 4 VP4 presets that I want to showcase here, and the way I have designed these is so that they provide one very specific sound rather than treat them as 4 individual effect blocks. These presets make use of some of the really fun routing possibilities and the ability to use multiple instances of certain blocks to create some really unique sounds, the way you might go out and buy a specific pedal that has multiple functions but one single on and off switch. So we'll go through each of these. I've got this preset here set up with a pi fuzz set to the new Russian type over here, going into a virtual capo set for an octave up, along with a virtual capo set for an octave down. So I can play chords into these, and I'll have a mix of my dry signal, an octave shifted version of the chord, and an octave up shifted version of the chord. At the end, I've got the option to kick in this flanger on there. So let's just have a listen to what this preset sounds like. First it's bypass, then I'm going to kick it in. Preset is an immense amount of fun. The next preset uses 4 drive blocks in parallel. I've got an octave distortion, a fuzz face, a T808 mod, and then the bender fuzz on here. What I've done in here in the expert edit is I've set all the EQ types to pre, and I've just done some basic filtering with these EQ types. So taking out some high end from the bender fuzz, taking out some low end and high end from the T808, taking out a little bit of low end from the fuzz face, boosting some mids on it, and again, taking out some highs. And then with the octave distortion, again, I'm just taking out a bunch of highs over here. I've also got a bit of clean blend happening on the bender fuzz and on the T808 over here. So there's a really cool way to combine different distortion characters and have my dry signal in there unaffected. Let's hear that. One thing that the VP4 can do that not even the Axe FX3 can do is run 4 simultaneous instances of the multi-tap delay block or the plex delay block. So in this preset, I've set up 4 different multi-tap delays in here to create a 16-voice chorus. In the next preset, we're using 4 plex delays to create a 32-voice delay with diffusion and some dynamics applied to it, where I'm able to swell in the reverbs based on how hard I'm playing. So let's hear the 16-voice chorus, then we'll hear that 32-voice delay reverb thing. Being able to apply those crazy VP4 sounds to my existing preset is a really lovely workflow. It means that I don't need multiple versions of this Axe FX3 preset just to have these different sounds. And also I can just operate the VP4 in an on-off style manner. However, I might want to say mount my VP4 up in my rack with my Axe FX3 and then just control it from my FC12. And I have set that up. You can see the FC12 on the floor at the moment. You can see the VP4 mounted up on a shelf at the moment. And I have set up some control scene MIDI controls on here to change the different presets, as well as being able to bypass the overall VP4, as well as one of the effects blocks in there. So we'll talk about how we're going to program this, but I'll just show you how it works first so you get an idea of why we would want to do this. We'll start out with the first preset. On top of all of that, the switching on the VP4 is gapless, which I absolutely love. Let's go over to FC Edit and take a look at how I've set up the FC12 and then how I have set up Control Switch MIDI. Now, I've used a bunch of per preset override switches on here because I didn't want to modify my global layouts. Of course, you have 8 layouts that you can totally customize on here. If you wanted to have a layout just for your control switches, that would be a great way to go. But the point is that I've simply assigned control switch 1 through to 6 to these 6 buttons on my FC12. If we take a look at what the per preset switches are doing, per preset 1 through to 4 is just set up with the relevant control switches. Note that I'm using momentary switches for these. So I'm going to be using these to send a MIDI program change to my VP4. More about that in a second. Per preset number 5 is set to control switch number 5. This is set up as a latching switch, and you can see I've given it the custom label of bypass. We're going to use this switch to send a MIDI CC to the VP4 that is going to bypass the VP4. Then the 6th control switch over here, again, latching, another custom label that I've set on here, just so I can remind myself that I'm going to use this to send a MIDI CC to bypass block number 4. Now, what we need to do is make sure our VP4 is set up to receive these MIDI commands. So we can do this. We can go over to setup in the VP4. If we go to MIDI, you can see I've got MIDI channel number 1, and I've set it up to receive MIDI program changes over here. Really, really important. Make sure that the device that you're using is set to the MIDI channel that you want, and you need to set up the VP4 to actually receive MIDI program changes over here. Then we can go down to remote, and this is where you can customize the MIDI CCs in here. So you can see I've got a bunch of them in here for MIDI control. The really relevant ones that we're going to take a look at over here is the true bypass setting. So I've used that as MIDI CC number 1, and then the effects for bypass I've set up as MIDI CC 13. You can set these to whatever you want, but just remember CC number 1 for bypass, and then CC 13 I have set up. This is just personal taste for me. You might want to use totally different numbers, but that's going to bypass the 4th effect block on there. From there, we can go back to FC Edit, and we're going to go to this CS MIDI tab over here. Let's go to control switch number 1, and I've already set these up, but I'm going to use the first 4 control switches to send MIDI program changes. These are going to recall the presets on my VP4. So you can send up to 4 different MIDI commands per switch on here. You know, if you had a bunch of other MIDI capable pedals, you could send out MIDI PCs or CCs to those at the same time with just 1 control switch, but we'll keep it simple today and just change the VP4. So channel number 1, remember that my VP4 was on channel number 1. That's very good that they're exactly the same. I'm sending a MIDI program change to preset number 96 on the VP4. I've just done similar things with control switch 2, control switch 3, and control switch 4. So I'm just selecting sequential presets. Now, again, I've just organized my banks on the VP4 so that those presets that I want are in order. I could send any value that I want here and select any preset over there. Just as an example, let's just say as an example, I wanted preset 55. If I hit CS4, it's going to bring up preset 55 on my VP4, but I don't want that one. I want number 99 over there. So let's hit that. That's my 32 voice Plex delay. What I've done on control switch 5 and 6 though, is these are sending MIDI CCs. So remember, MIDI CC number 1 was for the VP4 bypass. And this is why I've set these up as latching switches, because there is an on value and an off value. If I send on MIDI CC number 1 a value of 127, that is going to activate the VP4 bypass. What I want is as a latching switch, that's going to stay on. When I turn that control switch to its off state, it's going to send a different value to the same MIDI CC. So this is just going to turn the VP4 on and off. As we can see right there, it's bypassing the VP4 as I press the switch, which is exactly what I want. Finally, control switch number 6, I wanted to send to that custom CC I set up just to turn off the 4th effects block over there. The reason I wanted this was this first preset we were looking at that I called Royale. I want the option to have the flanger on and off. So again, this is a latching control switch. MIDI CC number 13. That controls the bypass state of the 4th effect block. Let's double check that over there in the VP4, effects for bypass CC 13. So we can go back over here to our control switch MIDI, control switch 6. There's our relevant MIDI CC, the on value 127, the off value 0. Again, they're pretty standard MIDI things. And then over here, I can just hit this foot switch and bypass that 4th block. Now, of course, you could expand this to say control multiple effects on there, like multiple VP4s. You could have an FM3 and a VP4, an FM9 and a VP4 working together. You could use pedals that are MIDI capable or old rack units and integrate them with your Fractal devices this way. You can also use scene MIDI if you want to send even more MIDI commands per foot switch on there. It will mean that you're also changing scenes on your Fractal device, which you might want to do. I've got multiple videos up on my channel that you can check out doing that. But for now, I'm going to play you all out with some of these really fun sounding VP4 tones into the Axe FX3. And I hope this demystifies what you can do with control switch MIDI using an FC controller, a Fractal device, and something like the VP4 or another MIDI capable pedal. This would also work perfectly well on the FM3 and FM9, which can use the onboard foot switches to send control switch or scene MIDI. All right, I'm going to play you all out. If you've got any questions, let me know in the comments below. Otherwise, I will see you on next week's video.